So this is our church's special day. Trinity Sunday is our patronal festival. It sounds sort of like a Harry Potter protection charm, doesn't it? It's the first Sunday after the Feast of Pentecost, when the memory of the fire of commission and proclamation is still fresh, when the story has turned a bit from God over there to God somehow in us. And so today we meet the Trinity as a reminder that we must be saturated with the knowledge of the shape and character and presence of God if we are to build the kingdom of which this God is king. This is not an abstract theological proposition. This is a way of living in the world. These three persons are like the cardinal directions. We may not always consider north and south, east and west, but they are always there. They silently shape and direct, and sometimes we become aware of them. And when we are aware of them, we can navigate by them. We can be oriented to their axes. So the first person of the Trinity gives us the first direction. We live in a created world. All that is has been made in love and with love and for love by the Creator, the Father, the Source. The second person shows us that the substance of the world is itself shimmering with divine presence in Jesus, and now in us, in whom Jesus dwells. We are to understand that to be a flesh and blood human is to be God's hands and hearts in the world. The third person is the one who breathes the movement from idea to concrete form and back again, the Holy Spirit. We are meant to build in the name and knowledge of this Trinity, to follow that call, which means to be oriented to love, to embodied reality, and to life itself. And there are an infinite number of ways to live in witness to this Trinity. Equally, there are a number of ways, a number of other kinds of ways to orient our time and energy. What would you say is our culture's biggest sin? We have many, for sure, but I think the very most pervasive one, the one that I see crossing boundaries of class and race and age like nothing else, is our poor relationship with time and purpose. We say that we do not have enough time, and we use this as a way to excuse ourselves from our deep calling to build the kingdom of this triune God. Now, to the person who is spinning round and round, the world appears to be moving very fast. A person spinning cannot grasp a true orientation or direction. Dizzy with spinning, sound and sight are blurred, but collectively, we insist that that spinning with technology and emails and meaningless surveys, insurance claims, whole companies of people working to hone the packaging for a series of products we don't need. We insist that this kind of spinning is the unavoidable state of reality. Now, a relationship with Creator and Spirit and one another is intended to help us stop spinning. It brings us over and over to stillnesses that can keep us oriented towards our real time and direction. The consequence of our spinning is death. If we insist on the blurred vision and faint nausea of spinning, we will progress day by unmemorable day to the grave, where we will panic when we realize we missed it. And this is why the voices of the prophets include scary things like winnowing forks and burning coals and unquenchable fire, to jolt us out of our complacency with our silly spinning, to make us gasp sharply and feel the urgency of this. Now, being faithful to time and the call God gives us is what John the Baptist means with this analogy of the wheat and the chaff. As the wheat grows, its development needs this sheath. And at the time of ripening, the protective cover is no longer necessary. It must be discarded, burnt even. If it is not removed, the dull husk blurs the meaning, nutrition, and possibility of the wheat. And the wheat respects the process of time unfolding in realizing its purpose. But we are different from wheat because we can resist the loss of our chaff. We can, in fact, wrap it around our shoulders like a garment and hug it close. And maybe because some of our spinning began with good intention and purposes, we particularly hate to let it go. But the spinning is the chaff that is our death, and we must let it go. Now, despite the fury of John the Baptist, bless his fiery heart, God does not handle us with that kind of definitiveness, even if it were for the best. God will not do the winnowing for you. God will not burn you to get you to listen. But God will offer you fire if you choose it. God will offer you work in God's service if you accept it. And God will call you beloved when you receive it. And God will give us moments of such pure and exquisite motionlessness that we may see what is wheat and what is chaff, that our hearts may be shaken with the holy fear that puts all things into perspective. And this is what both of our stories are today. Perfect moments of encounter with the living triune God that clarifies essential meaning, gives life direction and purpose. Jesus receives the sacrament of baptism. In this moment, Jesus accepts and owns his call, his mission, his purpose, his story. Whatever has gone before in his life falls away like a husk. In this perfect moment of the baptism of Jesus, the whole world stops. There is the embodied form of the Holy Spirit. There is the voice of the Creator. And there is the Son rising up out of the water. The Trinity, the very orientation of the fabric of the universe, surfaces and we see its shape. Baptism remains with us as a sacrament of rebirth, of accepting and claiming a call, a mission, a purpose, and a story. When we receive it, we too are chosen and identified by the Holy Spirit. We too, if we listen carefully, can hear the voice that is the crown of our being declare that we are beloved. And we can walk forward from that moment, as Jesus did, with focus and purpose. A perfect moment has the power to orient us. And then consider Isaiah, a court prophet, a full-time clergy person who lives and works in the temple. His encounter is perhaps less peaceful. He is perhaps more like us than we are like Jesus. He is religious and feels secure in the daily wheel of task and bustle. And so his encounter must shake him, and it does. The very pivots of the temple shake with the terrifying music that announces the real presence of God. Isaiah is held motionless in this wash of music that is too loud, too angry, too intense, and still is lesser than the presence itself. He feels utterly undone. He is aware of his smallness and the smallness of all he serves. But then, almost from within the music itself, from the seraphim who make the sound, comes also the healing, the fire, this fiery coal that changes his mouth, that forever after defines his voice. In the thrall of that perfect moment, the voice of the Lord Almighty asks, "Who will go for us?" The fire and the fear are meant to prepare us to hear the call. And Isaiah accepts. Here I am, send me. In this moment, he is reborn, renewed, and his call, mission, meaning, and story as a prophet are set. The chaff is burned away, his vision is clear. The soul-stirring power of the encounter orient his work and purpose. So then perhaps we begin to feel, if we look around us now, that we are not idly observing these stories, but that they are meant to act upon us in the same way they acted upon Jesus and Isaiah and countless others tucked away in the rooms of these texts. When a liturgy of baptism occurs, it is meant to reveal the shape of God's triune being and reorient our lives to that shape, as we celebrated baptisms last week. And when a choir sings a sanctus, it is intended to open a door into this very room, this very moment, where the voice of the Creator speaks to an incarnate listener surrounded by the music of the holy, a revelation in a perfect stillness. We don't like being still. We prefer to spin. We don't like to be hushed by the loud and fiery urgency of the transcendent one. We want to sing the songs we already know. It's hard work to be still and receive fire and call. It's hard work to listen to a language which is both unfamiliar and deeply resonant. It's easier to shift from foot, to be bored, to have reasons not to surrender, to check one's phone, to think of grocery lists, to feel hot. I'm sure there's a drop of sweat down your back. And yet we do try. We do assemble here together, don't we? We come week by week to this temple to look for this very moment of perfect, fiery stillness that can set us on our true road. And it matters that we seek these moments together. You may have noticed that there are very few visual references to the Trinity in this church dedicated to it. It's because we have come to understand that God's presence in this three-part way of created intention, of incarnated existence and life force lives in us and in the world around us. In our liturgical practice, we believe that the shape and the sound and the names of the Trinity can be revealed for a moment and reorient us. And we will hear this call now in the Eucharist. The Sanctus inside the Eucharistic prayer is meant to be a lit match, to wake us up, to make us gasp. It is to remind us that in our humble church practice, we believe we stand in the presence of the Almighty, that in this sacrament is the urgency and grandeur of Isaiah's call that declares the urgency and grandeur of God's call to each of us. In the Eucharistic prayer, we are supposed to come alive to the visible shape of the Trinity, to know in this moment that there is a Creator, a Holy Spirit circling and sustaining, and an incarnation waiting to happen again, Christ's incarnation, born again in each one of us. Maybe today will be our day to let go of the thin comfort of the lifeless husk of silly spinning. Maybe today we can discover exquisite stillness and let the loud and fiery music of the Sanctus cleanse us so we hear our call. Here I am, send me. Here we are, send us in your name.